day in the life of every glider soldier is the one when you make your first flight. All through your ground training, you'll point toward that day, when you're towed up here high above the earth, when you cut loose from the tow ship, and when you experience for the first time the sensation of free flight in a silent, motorless glider. But before that day, you've got a few things to learn back on Mother Earth. You don't just climb into a glider and take off. When you reach the glider, you'll learn to ground your equipment so that you're ready for any work that has to be done before the takeoff. You'll put your pack on the ground, your gas mask on top of the pack, and lean your rifle against the pile. Then, if there's any loading to do, you take care of that first. Suppose additional ammunition and water has been dropped here by supply to go along with your squad. You stow extra supplies in front of the glider against the nose. These 2 boxes of ammunition and 2 cans of water add up to 300 pounds, so you don't want all that weight bouncing around loose in the glider if you run into rough air. You'll place them so they can be bound together as a unit and lashed down. If you find parachutes in the glider, pass a harness out to each man. It's easier to put the parachutes on outside where there's more room. This harness is for the QAC, or quick attachable chest type chute. You leave the parachute packs inside the ship. Put the harness on like a coat, with an arm through each shoulder strap. Fasten the breast strap, and then fasten the leg straps. If you're given a seat-type chute like the ones the pilots wear, you still adjust the harness this same way. Be sure those leg straps fit snugly. The QAC type parachute is especially good for glider troops because you can wear your field pack and gas mask over the harness. Then you've always got your equipment right with you during the flight and when you land. But you won't always get the QAC. So here the equipment will be carried just as it would be with other types of chutes. Now there's a point to remember. Always carry your weapon at the trail. Otherwise, you might rip a hole in the glider fabric. Inside the glider, take your seats from front to rear. Pick up the parachute pack and place it on your knees. Then fasten your safety belt. You'll fasten yourself in your seat for the same reasons you lash your supplies down. So you'll stay put. And you'll be glad that safety belt's holding down your stomach if the glider runs into rough weather. You can tighten the belt by pulling the free end of the strap on each side. Next, you snap the parachute pack to the D-rings on the harness. You can see now why it's called the quick attachable chest type. The ripcord pull is on your right. Always know where the ripcord is on every parachute. You may never have to use it, but when you're issued a chute, make sure you're ready to use it if you have to. After you're all set, grasp the rifle with both hands. Rest the butt of the rifle on the floor between your feet. Your pack and gas mask are on the floor behind your legs. Those extra supplies still have to be lashed down, and that may be your job while the other men are taking their seats. If so, you lash them down to the tie-down rings and forward against the nose so they can't move in any direction. Then you take your seat. Be sure to fasten your safety belt. Now attach your parachute. Every man in your squad will be inspected by the squad leader to make sure nobody slipped up on any of these things. The glider pilots are trained men of the Troop Carrier Command. Before they climb in at the controls, they'll look you over, too. On training flights, you'll usually have both a pilot and co-pilot. The pilots wear the seat-type parachute. They sit on it as though it were a cushion. The chute itself is different, but they adjust the harness just as you do for the QAC, and each pilot tightens his safety belt. These Air Force men have the job of getting you safely into the air and landing you safely at your destination. They check the glider controls to make sure that everything's in good shape. Nothing is left to chance. Okay, you're all set, and so are the pilots. The loaded glider is ready to be pulled to the takeoff line. An Air Force tractor drives up to do the job. These men in the tractor belong to the ground crew of the Troop Carrier Command. It's these men, along with the trained glider mechanics, who keep them flying. They checked your glider, and they knew it was ready for flight before it was ever assigned to your mission. While you're being pulled to the takeoff line, the crew of your tow ship starts the motors. When the engines are warmed up, the pilot taxis his ship to the takeoff line. There, more men of the Air Force go into action to get the transports and men of the Airborne off on schedule. The tow ropes fasten to the tail of the C-47. The other ends attached to the nose of your glider. Here's the moment you've been waiting for. The glider pilots are ready. The pilot of the tow ship watches the ground crew. The ground crew signals to take up the slack in the tow rope. And there's the high ball. The tow ship moves off, and you and your glider are on your way. There was no shock or jerk at the takeoff, because that 300-foot tow rope is made of nylon, and it stretches to absorb the shock. Yes, you're on your way, and it took teamwork to get you this far, soldier. But you're part of the team, too. And your job, your fighting job, comes when you land. First, though, you've got some flying to do. And you'll learn new things about the glider each time you go up. You'll find out that the kind of trip you have depends a good deal on the position of your glider. What the Air Force men call the angle of dangle. If the glider's on line with the tow ship, the prop wash will give you a choppy ride. So your pilot usually flies in the high or the low tow position, either above or below the level of the tow ship. If you feel squeamish on your first few flights, a tight safety belt will help to steady your stomach. Your altitude also affects the smoothness of your flight. On tactical problems, you'll usually fly at treetop level. Down here, the air is bumpy, but that's worth putting up with because you're below the level of fighter aircraft. Here's how the ground skims beneath you when you're flying at low altitude. Nobody has to tell you that you're moving at high speed. If you cut loose down here, the pilot would point the glider's nose down fast and make a blitz landing. But you're not ready to land yet. Instead, you're climbing up several hundred feet to an average height for most of your training flights. The air here isn't as bumpy as it was down below, but it's not always smooth either. Now you're on the high tow position, flying above the C-47. Take a good look at the world from up here. The ground seems just like an air photo map, and each of those fields is a possible landing field for your glider. A powered airplane wouldn't want to land there, but you can. You're not going to make use of any of them this time, though. No, you and your glider are still climbing. Now you're really upstairs, where the air is smooth as a mountain lake, and it seems as if you're suspended in space. Even the pilots can relax up here. You can't get a view like this from a foxhole. There's no feeling of speed, only the roar of the wind on the glider. Hard to believe you're being towed at 120 to 150 miles an hour, just as fast as you were moving over the treetops. Your altitude here could be 6,000, 8,000 feet, even 2 miles above the earth. If your glider cuts loose at 2 miles, it can glide 30 miles before landing, and it glides those 30 miles in silence. But on this trip, you're going to stay in tow until you're lower down. About here, the average altitude, your pilot heads for the landing field. Now's your chance to make a quick reconnaissance from the air. That may come in plenty handy later on. Your pilot spots the landing field. It's up to him to cut your glider loose. The tow rope release lever is just over his head in the center of the nose. He hits the release. Your glider is free, and you bank to the left. You glide 15 feet forward for every 1 foot you come down. But your pilot can use the spoilers and the wings and reduce the gliding ratio from 15 to 1 to 4 to 1. Your tow ship speeds on its way. In training flights, the tow ship will drop the nylon tow rope back on the airfield so the rope can be used again. When you're coming in on a long, low glide, your squad leader may order you to secure your equipment before landing. If he does, the men sitting on the right side of the glider start first. You unsnap your parachute, slip off the harness, and then put on your gas mask and field pack. You're nearing the ground, so there's no time to lose. As soon as your equipment's on, fasten that safety belt again. Now the men on the other side get ready. When they're finished, all of you are set to unload the minute the glider rolls to a stop. That's right. Always fasten your safety belt before a landing. Why? Well, you're gliding in at 75 miles an hour or better, and that's reason enough. And there you are, safely back to Earth again. This trip, you'll have plenty of room and you'll roll across the airfield to use up momentum. But your glider can stop on a dime when you have to. As soon as your glider stops, you get going. Use all doors and move out on the double. Your next step is when you take part in a mass glider maneuver. These have to move by the clock, on schedule. At a specified time, you arrive on the field and start loading the gliders. The gliders are parked according to a plan worked out by the Air Force, and you'll be told in advance just where to find the glider you're going to fly in. Here's where you use all you've learned about loading and lashing equipment. Your squad or your gun crew have learned to work together, but now you're part of a bigger team, a combat team, and you're headed for an even bigger job. You have only a certain number of minutes to complete the loading job before time for stations, and you're moving on schedule. Stations means the loading is finished, and all the men of the Airborne are in seats in the gliders, with parachutes on and safety belts fastened, and all equipment lashed down. Now the men of the Troop Carrier Command go into action. These men also have a schedule to meet. Tow ropes are laid out, gliders are pulled to the line, tow ships are moved up, all according to plans made in advance by the Air Force and the Airborne working together. Activity like this may be going on at several airfields at the same time. It takes a mass of men, gliders, and airplanes, and a lot of careful planning to move a large force by air. The first glider is off on schedule. Less than 30 seconds later, a second ship takes off. And another every half minute. Each glider is loaded with its complement of men, weapons, and equipment. The first gliders to take off will form the leading echelon. They carry the men and the materials that you'll need first when you land. The pilots fly the planes and gliders to a rendezvous point, where gliders and tow ships assemble. They come together from different runways and from different airfields. The usual flight formation is 2 tow ships and 2 gliders. That makes for control in flight and keeps related equipment together. A truck and a trailer together, a howitzer and the jeep that'll pull it, a truck and an anti-tank gun, weapons and ammunition, radios, medical supplies, engineer tools, demolitions, anti-aircraft guns, and men, all riding by air. And when all ships of your echelon are assembled, you head for your objective in formation, according to plan and on schedule. You're nearing the end of the flight. The pilots cut loose. The gliders are coming in. Long before you land here, you study this landing area on an air photo map until you know it by heart. So you know where you are when you land. You're near your objective, not on it, but close. And around you, the terrain offers both cover and concealment where you can assemble your units and organize for the attack. The gliders keep coming in, one close behind another. The Air Force brings you in, but now it's the men of the Airborne who go into action. You've got to unload fast. You want to take the enemy by surprise. Nothing can stop you now. This is what you're training for. You and the glider pilots, the ground crews, the navigators, the radio operators, your commanding officer, his staff, and all of the others. You're training to develop skill and the ability to move fighting men and equipment by air and to set them down where they can come out fighting and do the greatest particular damage to the enemy. This is no sabotage raid. This is an airborne mission. You're making a landing in force. You're bringing with you what it takes to smash the enemy, to seize and to hold ground, to disrupt communications, to block the movements of enemy reserves, to prevent his withdrawal, to fight as the maneuver element of a larger force, to assist your own forces in making a breakthrough. And to do any of those things, you've got to keep moving. All elements of your combat team come with you. Infantry, combat engineers, medics, anti-aircraft gunners, communications personnel, reconnaissance units, field artillery. Yes, basically you men of the Airborne are ground troops. And when you're on the ground, it's up to you to unload fast, to move into cover, to establish security, and to organize quickly for a swift, coordinated attack, according to plan and on schedule. And remember this, you fight on the ground. Your glider is merely a means to an end, a means of transportation to carry you, your weapons and equipment over land, over water, over jungle, over enemy positions, and to set you down on the ground again with speed and surprise.